sampling, and sampling is a very key aspect of biostatistics. Now, stepping into sampling, we have to know what a sample is. So, what is a sample? It's a subset selected from a population. I told you, like, I told you in the previous video that the population is the entire group to be studied, right? So, sample is picking out a part of the entire group. So a sample is a smaller group chosen from a larger population so we can study it instead of studying everyone. For example, you don't want to study everyone in your school. You can pick a subset, you can pick a particular department to study. So that's what the sample is a subset selected from an entire population. So the difference between the sample and a population entails the entire group, while a sample includes part of the group. Right? Population is harder to study. In most cases, impossible to reach. Right? It's harder to study, while sample is easier to study. That's why it's very expensive to do a census. Now, this is by the way, a census is taking the entire population into study. That's why when they are doing census in your country, they are checking for the population of everyone, right? And it's quite an expensive procedure. So it is harder to study, while sample is easier to study. The example we gave here is a population of all pregnant women in the city. Now, out of all the pregnant women in the city, which could be 1,000, 2,000, 5,000, and the rest, we pick out 200 pregnant women for our studies. Now, what the importance of sampling? It saves time, it reduces cost, it's easier to manage. It allows research when population is large. So all of these are the importance of sampling. Now, literally there are two sampling methods: the probability sampling and non-probability sampling. Now, what's sampling? Sampling is actually the process of picking out. When you're picking out a sample, you have to pick it out in a way that represents the larger group, right? So, what are the ways of picking out a sample? That's what we call sampling, right? So, we have two types basically: probability sampling and non probability sampling. Now, probability sampling, every member has an equal chance of selection. That is very crucial. In probability sampling, every member, that means when picking out the sample, the whole population have equal chance of being selected. And we have a couple of methods under the probability sampling, which we're going to go through right now. So we have the simple random sampling. That this is just randomly picking out individuals from a population. It's just random, just like picking out maybe balls out of a box, right? Random. It's just random. Or selecting a name from a list, right? That is simple random sampling. Everyone has a chance of being selected in that setting. Now, in systematic sampling, this is still under the probability sampling method, right? The selecting of every nth individual. What does this mean? For example, you have 100 patients in a clinic and you decide to choose every 10 patients. Every 10. That means you pick the 10th patient, you pick the 20th, you pick the 30th, every 10th patient. Or you have 1,000 and you decide to pick the 100th. So the nth individual, like the 100th individual, right? I believe that's clear. It's just picking out. And this is one of the sampling method that could cause inequality in the chance, because there could be some hidden traits in the 10th person. So it might not necessarily be as equal as we think. There might be some hidden traits that are within. What if the 10th person in every population actually has diabetes, and you went and you picked the 10th person. So you see that the population will not be equally represented. But this is a probability sampling method where you pick the nth individual. So stratified. Now, in stratified sampling, we divide them into two. Now, take note of the word homogeneous groups, because it's going to come back, because the next sampling method we are going to talk about, you will need that word, homogeneous. So the population is divided into two groups, or homogeneous groups, and then its sample is taken from each of the group. For example, separating by gender, you separate the population into male and female, and then you pick from the male and then you pick from the female. That's stratified. And the word I want you to take note of is homogeneous. You have the homogeneous male and the homogeneous female. They are both homogeneous, right? You divide them into two groups. Now, in cluster, why I said we should take note of the word homogeneous is because in cluster, it's actually heterogeneous, right? In stratified, it's homogeneous, like in the case of the gender, that means the same male and female. But in cluster, you are just picking heterogeneous groups. That's the difference between cluster and stratified. In stratified, it's homogeneous. In cluster sampling, it is heterogeneous. Now, population is divided into clusters. For example, you're selecting three hospitals and studying all patients there. This, like, maybe you want to pick out hospitals in a particular district, right? You just select three hospitals out. Now, these are heterogeneous clusters, and I believe you understand what I'm saying. Now, those were the probability sampling methods. Now, in the non-probability sampling methods, not everyone has equal chance, right? In the probability sampling method, everyone has equal chance, but in the non-probability sampling method, not everyone has equal chance. And let's go into some of them. In the convenience sampling, is just one of the weakest form of sampling, where you just select whoever is easiest to reach. It's literally reaching whoever is available. For example, surveying patients in one clinic. These are the people you could meet. Well, that doesn't give everyone an equal chance at this. So that's convenience sampling. Now, in purposive sampling, the researcher selects participants based on a specific purpose. For example, you want to study only diabetic patients, so you're looking for only diabetic patients. You're looking for only HIV patients. That's a purposive. You're going to use the purposive sampling method. All right. Now, in the quota sampling, selecting participants until a quota is reached. For example, you want to use 50 male and you want to use 50 females. So you select on if once you reach 50 males, you don't pick anymore. Once you meet 50 females, you do not pick anymore. That's what we mean by quota sampling. So the participants until a quota is reached. Now, the final non-probability sampling method is the snowball sampling. Now, existing participants recruit new participants. What does this mean? It's kind of a referral stuff. You're trying to refer, you're depending on referral, because in most of the times, like the example we have here, you could be studying a rare disease. Could be studying a rare disease in which the patient you are studying, maybe you're able to get one person with the disease, the person can refer you to another person that has the same disease. So it's basically based on referral for snowball sampling, and it's used when there's like it's hard to get that sample. And with this, these are some of the sampling methods.